Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin, and today I'd like to share 5 quilting things that I love, and maybe a bonus one. So stay with me. You may be noticing this little assortment of beauty right here, and this is a shout out to my friend and viewer, Nettie, who her craft is paper. And so all of this right here is paper. And I received this in the mail. And the hot air balloon says, "Love is in the air." And when I took this lid off, what I was met with was all of this little tiny shredded paper and chocolates. And then I lifted it up and noticed that there's a lovely little charm right here that has my initial C and a little gemstone, which is actually my birthstone. And so that was already amazing and cool and fantastic. And then out of her kindness, there were 4 of these little lovelies. And it opens up, there's a magnet that holds it closed. And there were chocolates inside for my family members. And then the last one, and this is amazing. So I'm going to do exactly for you what happened when I opened the box. So I pulled this little ribbon right here. And first of all, look at this gorgeous box. I lifted the lid, and what is inside, and I have, because I've opened it, there's a little teeny tiny metal spoon, not metal, paper spoon that looks like metal, and it says pull up spoon, and I pulled up the spoon, and in this red mug was more chocolate and more little paper shreds, and it says Happy Galentine's Day, and there's a quote from Marilyn Monroe, and it says, "We are all of us stars, and we deserve to twinkle." And so I realized after opening this box up, she made this box. She made everything in this box. She made the red mug with the glitter. She made the little hinged coffee. She put together the spoon. She cut the hearts. The whole entire box was made from scratch for me. And I am so humbled and honored by that and pleased. And I feel the friendship and kindness of that. And I just wanted to share it with you because it's such a testament to the beautiful souls that you guys are and the beautiful things that you make out there, and that a lot of us don't know anything about. And so there's this just beauty in paper. And so thank you, Nettie, for my gift. Thank you for the kindness. Thank you for the love for my family. And to all of you who are out there, keep making gorgeous stuff. Man, this is what makes life worthwhile to me. So anyway, I had to say that. And now let's talk about the 5 quilting things that I really love. I'm going to put this away. I have always hated thimbles, hated them. And I recognize the need for them. And I've had a whole slew of them historically. I have embroidered, I have cross-stitched. So when you do any sort of handwork with a needle, you need a thimble. And I've hated all of them. And then when I started quilting, I found this little guy, and it is by Dritz, D-R-I-T-Z. Got it at Joann's, so you can find it probably anywhere. And it's just this nifty little thimble. It has air holes in the back, and which is important. And then it's got these really nice grooves in it, as thimbles often do. This one is especially good because it's got some give. And the thimble holes are really, really great, especially if you're working with a thick shirt fabric for binding, like a heavy duty twill, which I have done. And so I love that thimble, and it has given me a lot of use, but I love this thimble. It's made by Clover, also fairly easy to find. My husband got me this when I was complaining about something to do with thimbles. I don't know about you guys. I do not consider myself an especially sweaty person, but apparently when I go to do handwork, I guess my fingers sweat. I don't know. I need something that breathes or that absorbs whatever is going on in my fingertips. So he got me this thimble, and I have just loved it. And you can see it's gotten some use. I don't know if you can see on the overhead shot there. You can tell really where on my finger I use it the most, but it is really wonderful. And so I don't have that thing where after I've had it on, it feels like it has imprinted into my finger, and I don't feel like I need to take it off. In fact, I have actually been hand stitching binding, sitting on the couch, and it's time to get up and go to bed, and I get up and go to bed, and I get all the way to the bed, and I'm pulling up the covers and realize I still have it on my finger. True story. So I haven't actually gone all the way to bed and to sleep with it on my finger yet, but that's probably coming. But anyway, so if you are looking for a good thimble and you haven't liked any thimble that you've used, that's a really, really great one. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is this book, Sunday Morning Quilts. It is a collaboration with Amanda Jean Nyberg and Cheryl Arkinson, both of whom I follow on Instagram, and both of them just uniquely creative individuals. And Amanda Jean Nyberg she just is a phenom to me when it comes to scrap quilts and using all of the fabric that she has and not wasting fabric, which aligns with my let's not spend a whole lot of money and let's not waste money on fabric, and which is kind of the shirt fabric thing. It kind of hurts my soul when we have those quilt patterns that there's a lot of waste. So that's really her love. And a lot of her quilts do not look like scrap quilts. And I'm very drawn to that. I like quilts that it's like I use shirt fabrics and I don't want it to look like a shirt quilt. And in fact, a lot of times I think to myself, if I didn't point out the fabrics that were shirts, no one would know. She's like that about scraps. If you didn't point out this is a scrappy quilt, you wouldn't know it's a scrappy quilt. My very first quilt came from this book, a pattern in this book. And I've actually marked it. And the thing that I loved about this quilt pattern, still love about it, and what I like about scrappy quilts and quilts with men's dress shirts is there is no quilt exactly like the one that you'll make with shirt fabrics. And there's no quilt that will be exactly like a quilt that you'll make from a scrappy quilt book. So this was the original quilt that I made. I did yellow instead of orange and light blue instead of turquoise. And of course, my pattern is completely different. I've made two quilts from this book. I made this one called Checkerboard for one of my very best friends. And when I tell you I think it's just amazing. It looks as interesting in real life as it does in the book. And it is just so beautiful. But more than just those two quilt projects in here, there are so many great patterns. But the thing that I love about this book, it really encourages the reader to make their own statement with their own quilts. So in each project, there's a little sidebar that says about the quilting, and it will talk about why they chose to quilt that particular quilt with the quilt pattern. So swirly or crosshatch or straight line quilting. And there's also usually within a page a little sidebar that says make it yours. And there are suggestions for different colorway, different fabrics, ideas for how to make that same pattern but look different with different fabrics, basically. And I think that's really at the heart of what I love, which is the uniqueness and how special each individual quilt that anyone makes, but especially if you're buying shirts and using them as fabric, or if you're using upcycled pajama pants or linens from the thrift store, or if you're using your scraps, that quilt will be like no other quilt. And anybody and anything that encourages me to do that is a love for me. And it has practical advice and the techniques to do it. So it's not just like, go be you. Good luck with that. There's actual, here's the pattern, here's how to do it, here's how to do it if you have this instead of that, or whatever. I think it is just such a wonderful resource. I keep coming back to it. I borrowed it from the library to start with, and I had it for about 4 days. And my husband saw that I couldn't put it down and bought my own copy for me. And it lives on my coffee table. When I went to pull it out to highlight that I liked it so much, I realized I didn't necessarily want it to be on camera because I spilled my coffee on the coffee table one day and it leaked onto my book because that's how close it is to my coffee cup. And there's a stain on the front. But if that's not a testimony of how good and how useful and how much I love it, I don't know what is. Number 3 quilting thing that I love is this ruler. It is, I'm going to mispronounce this probably. It's an Olipfa, O''Lipfa lip edge ruler. And I will tell you, this was a gift to me from my husband. He buys excellent gifts. Oh, so thoughtful. And I wasn't sure I was going to love it. I have a 6 by 24 inch ruler, and I thought, I don't know that I need a 5-inch ruler, and I don't know that I need a lip edge on my ruler, but it was a thoughtful gift, and so I use it. And it turns out it's my favorite ruler. I use it for everything. So the lip edge on it, this right here, you can't see that. It's clear. And I'm holding it up like, see? And there's no way anyone is going to see that. So that's fantastic. But I tried. The way this works is it works like a T-square. The lip edge, which is labeled lip edge, makes me want to like lip edge. It actually slides along the edge of a cutting mat and kind of acts like a T-square so that it has that kind of grippy. And I'll tell you what I do with it and why I like it so much. And I have fabric out here to show you, although I'm not actually going to cut it because I will mess it up and somebody will watch it on camera and be like, your ruler moved and you messed your cut up. And I'll be like, yes, it did. I use this up against the edge of my cutting mat. Now, small qualification. One of my cutting mats is actually not totally square. So I do still have to watch it on that one. This one is very predictable. So I line it up on the one edge and make sure it's like, actually I may be using the cutting mat that is not square right now. But I line it up, and if I need to cut a whole bunch of 2.5-inch wide strips, I line it up, cut on this side, and then because my sewing table is open on 3 sides, I come around to the other side and cut this side. So I go romp there, and then I come around to the other side, which I won't do because my fanny will be right in the, I apologize to our Australian viewers. My bottom will be in camera. And for those of you who don't know, that word that starts with F and rhymes with canny is not what we call it in the United States. So anyway, you cut, tell me if I'm wrong, Australian viewers. So you come back and cut on the other side, and now there's a 5-inch wide strip. without moving my fabric. And because I have that lip edge, I lift it up and I slide down the 2.5 inches. And then I do the same thing again. And so what I'm doing is that first cut, for example, would be here. Well, actually, let me just do it again. So here's the first cut. Here's the second cut. Then I pick my middle between those, which in this case is 10.5, which I'm saying out loud because I will forget. And then I cut here and here. And now I have 4 2.5 inch strips. Now you might go, it's the same number of cuts. And you would be right. But I don't have to reline up my 2.5 inch ruler for every one of them. So I'm getting 2 cuts for every one line up. Does that make sense? And I love that. And I did not think that I was going to use that lip edge as much as I do, but it's like the perfect, it's just the perfect length. It's 24 inches. It's 5 inches wide. I do a lot of, apparently, quilts that have 5-inch blocks. And so that's always great. And it just works beautifully. And I don't have to move my fabric as much. So if you were in the market for a new ruler, this is a good one. And that length, for those of you that use yardage, it's enough to cover, if you fold your width of fabric in half and you're at 22 inches, it goes over the length of your yardage. So that's fantastic. So that was thing number 3. Thing number 4 is not a thing, but a who. And I love independent quilt pattern designers. I think they are so great. But there's one in particular that I don't know. It's something about her. She produces a lot of quilt patterns. It's Erica Jackman from Kitchen Table Quilting. First of all, she has a ton of quilt patterns. So just the sheer number to choose from is amazing. She has a number of really beautiful and interesting quilt patterns. I made her Elena quilt, and if you've been with me for a while, you probably remember that one in development, and then I did a quilt pattern thing about it, and then I did a quilt story on it because it was just fantastic. And that's probably one of 10 that are really interesting. They're fun to make. They quilt up beautifully. But in addition to that, she has a fantastic Instagram account. Is that what that's called? Instagram account. And a really great website. And so she has posted a number of resources on her Instagram account. And when I see them, I think, oh, that's so good. And of course, I hit the little save and then save it into my resources tab. On her website, there's a tab that says blog. And if you click on her blog, she has a resource for calculating backing fabric. So if you, like me, sometimes don't piece your back on your quilt and you use backing fabric, it's a trick, like figuring out how much fabric you need, how to piece it together. Unless you use that 108-inch wide fabric, you're going to have to put your backing fabric together in some way. She has done the math on every kind of standard, not that there is one, but every standard quilt size. So baby, throw, twin, full, queen, and king, and shows you if your quilt is this size, this is how to measure out your backing fabric and put it together. So check that out. I have used that resource so many times. She has resources on binding. She has just a number of really helpful things on her blog. This person that I just am kind of a fan of, Erica Jackman, her website and Instagram is Kitchen Table Quilting. And what I have discovered by following her is she's a very authentic person. She a lot of times will talk about her fabric hoarding and she'll show pictures, and she's just a real authentic, appears to be a kind-hearted soul. And so if you hadn't had any exposure to her work or her resources, I encourage you, go check her out because she's fantastic. Okay, so quilt thing, number 5, it's not a good list unless it has some fabric in it. And my favorite, I feel like I should break into song, Julie Andrews, my favorite things, gingham. I love it. I absolutely love it. And somebody asked me the other day, why do you like gingham so much? And I think in part, my Mimi, that was my grandmother, she wore a lot of gingham, and she was the grandmother that had the spotless house that when you were sick and had to stay home from school and your mom had to go to work, I stayed with Mimi. And she sewed and she embroidered and she cross stitched and she had a garden, and she really was just a sweet person. She was a patter. She would pat people that she loved. And she wore button-up gingham and plaid pastel shirts, often with matching pastel pedal pushers. So she would wear like a pink and white gingham shirt, and she would have pink pedal pushers, and she wore little white kids with them. And she was sweet, and she always smelled like Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion, which is one of the best things in the world to smell like if you're a grandmother, I think. Or at least that's the way I remember it. She just was a really sweet person. And so I have a lot of fond memories of her, and I associate gingham with her. But I also think it's just a fun fabric to work with. It's not as hard as it looks. There's usually a lot of variety, even in men's shirts. This stack, this is all gingham in almost every color. I actually have more than this. This is just a selection, just a few. I mean, I have chartreuse and lime green gingham in my stash. And y'all, all of this came from men's shirts. So you can find a lot of gingham shirts in a variety of colors, especially in the South, apparently, including, look at this pink. I think that might have been a women's shirt. But purple, this periwinkle is one of my very favorites. And I have it folded on the bias. And this is one of the things I love about gingham, is it is so orderly and neat, and when you cut it on the XY axis and use it in a quilt, it's really pretty. But you can cut it on the bias and it becomes even more interesting. So it doesn't feel like a check, it's diagonal. And if you cut it on the bias and use it as binding, even better. So I love it. I think it's neat because if you use it in your quilt, very often, it's just like if I held this up, it doesn't really read as a pattern. It reads like just a pastel version of whatever the predominant color in it. So this red from a distance will not read red. It'll look rose, and so on and so forth. And you can also find sometimes a variety of, like, this is a macro, really huge check. And then the itty bitty tiny micro that you can't even tell that from this distance, probably, that it's gingham. So, and they work well together. You can put pretty much any size gingham together and any color gingham together. For some reason, it seems to work. So, I may have saved the best for last. I need to hush because I'm going to do a whole video on gingham one of these days, and I'll have spoiled it by saying it all now. So those are my 5 things. And since it's kind of around Valentine's Day, it seemed appropriate that I would tell you what I love. And I alluded to the fact that there's a bonus thing. And the bonus thing that I love is other makers and quilters and what we do for each other, lifting each other up, encouraging each other, inspiring each other. It's just like Nettie's red sequined box that she made me that's so beautiful, instantly gave me light and life and inspiration. And it's a crossover. I don't have to be working in paper to recognize the beauty and be inspired. And I think that's true of all of us creatives out there. So the quilting thing is you guys and the rest of us that are out here trying to make beautiful and useful things. Thanks for being with me today. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Cat Bread Quilts.